So kind of being a translator is something that's come up in the conversations I've had with architects time and time again. What are the other sort of qualities that you think make a really good architect?
So I think there's a real issue in our community on conflating the discipline of architecture
Right.
and being employed to be an architect.
Okay.
And I think these are clearly closely related, but they are importantly different.
Okay.
So if you're being employed to be an architect or engaged in a freelance capacity, which is basically what happens to me nowadays, you are being engaged because client knows that they've got a problem and they've got an emotional feeling of what they'd like to do, but they've also got some doubt as to whether that's actually the right thing.
Okay.
And the outcome's important. And so when I said about perspectives, as an architect, yeah, sure, you can at times make decisions, but actually that's not your primary role.
Okay.
And sometimes I feel people in our community slightly lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Actually, your role as an architect is to provide the perspectives to enable clarity around decision making on the people who are employed by the enterprises that you're in to make decisions. That's your role.
It's a really important distinction, isn't it? I think you're right. I think there's a number of people that think they're there to make the decisions, but it's actually about to present the options, to present the perhaps trade-offs that are being made, and help others make an advised, informed decision, rather than perhaps be blinded by the science or the bells and whistles of the tech, the shiny new tech, or kind of come to the conclusion they already have have the solution, and it's kind of breaking that down, looking at different perspectives, as you say, different answers, isn't it? I think that's that you hit on a really important aspect of the role.
Yeah, and I think that there's a multifaceted side to that. So part of it is understanding that technology in general terms is a means, it's not an end. And so the outcome should never be technology. Technology will almost always help you get there on the journey, but it shouldn't be the destination, despite what some tool providers would like to believe. I think the other thing about that, and this is where I think architects really provide value for organisations, it's the layers of perspectives. So one of the things about good EAs is they can peel the onion for decision makers, so that they can start really high level conceptual, but depending on the context of the conversation, the decisions being made, they need to be able to go down to the logical and then the physical, so that they can provide both the perspectives at each layer a decision needs to be made, but also the perspectives for the reality of the business. And I think again that sometimes gets lost. PowerPoint slides are not the business. PowerPoint slides are simply a means of communicating a set of perspectives quite often, and ideally trying to drive decision making. So for me, I think it's not only is it important as an architect on highlighting what you could describe as the options and the choices to be made, but also particularly with sort of C-suite kind of members, highlighting to them the choices they have already made. So because quite often I'll be in conversations with people at that level, and they'll say, well, I don't like any of these options. And I'll go, yeah, okay, that's fine. They're not necessarily my first set of options I start with, but these are the options you are where you are now. If you want a better set of options, we can look at how you might journey towards a better set of options, but it's probably worth looking at how you arrived at these options. And sometimes that might be decisions that member of the C-suite made. Quite often it's just decisions that were made in the enterprise.
It's important context, isn't it? And we kind of talk in the architecture profession a lot about debt, don't we? Technical debt, because it's an easy term perhaps for the business to understand. You kind of spend more than you have, you end up in debt. In technology and transformation terms, you can have a similar sort of issue where you've perhaps made lots of short-term decisions and ended up with technical debt. I think we're moving into a world where there are a number of different dimensions of debt now that an organisation perhaps is building up. And see, what you're talking about here is really interesting to me, because it's talking about the context and the history, I suppose, of what an organisation or an enterprise has chosen to do, the decisions it turns and the choices it's made along its sort of journey. I